Jackson Hole, Wyoming in December was a landscape of brutal beauty. Alex Durant stood at the window of his modest cabin 6 miles outside town, watching dawn break over snow-covered mountains. At 38, he looked weathered beyond his years, the kind of erosion that came from surviving when your entire team didn't. 18 months ago, Alex had been a Navy SEAL operator with 12 years of experience and a reputation for flawless mission execution. Then came Iraq, a compound breach based on intelligence that put his 4-man element in the wrong location at the wrong time. The ambush killed his teammates within seconds. Alex survived only because Juno, his K-9 partner, detected the threat 30 seconds before engagement, and her alert made him hit the deck before the first shots. The official report called it enemy action. Alex knew it was faulty intelligence, someone's desk error transformed into 4 body bags, and survivor's guilt that woke him every night at 300 hours to the sound of gunfire that wasn't there. He'd left the teams 6 months after the ambush, unable to function in spaces where teamwork reminded him of the 4 brothers he couldn't save. The wilderness guiding work in Jackson Hole offered isolation disguised as employment, leading corporate groups and outdoor enthusiasts through terrain where the only threats were weather and wildlife. His companion was Juno, a 7-year-old Belgian Malinois who'd served as his K-9 partner during that final deployment. The dog had taken shrapnel in her hindquarters during the ambush, painful but recoverable. When Alex retired, Juno retired with him under the National Defense Authorization Act that allowed handlers to adopt their partners. They were both adjusting to civilian life poorly. Alex through isolation and insomnia, Juno through restless pacing and phantom alerts to threats that didn't exist, her training still active despite the absence of missions. Belgian Malinois were bred for intensity, elite military working dogs chosen for their intelligence, agility, and relentless work drive. Juno could run 30 miles per hour, process complex commands instantly, and maintain focus in chaos that would break other breeds. But in civilian Wyoming, that intensity had nowhere to go. Juno paced the cabin's perimeter at night, alerted to passing wildlife with the same urgency she'd used for IED detection, searched for missions that no longer existed. On this December morning, when overnight temperatures had dropped to -22 degrees, Alex let Juno out for her morning patrol. The dog moved through snow with professional efficiency, scanning the property's boundaries with senses far superior to any human capability. 15 minutes later, Juno returned, but not through her usual entrance. She scratched at the door with urgent, deliberate patterns, the alert signal for casualty detection, a protocol from search and rescue training that muscle memory never forgot. Alex opened the door. Juno stood on the porch, body language radiating mission focus. In her jaws, held with impossible gentleness, was a puppy, maybe 8 weeks old, shepherd mix with husky coloring, completely frozen, body stiff, ice-coating fur, eyes closed, no visible breathing. Juno set the puppy down with extraordinary care and looked at Alex with the same focused intensity she'd used during combat operations. This was a mission. Alex's first instinct, trained by 12 years of combat medicine, told him the puppy was dead, core temperature too low, exposure too prolonged. The body's stiffness suggested rigor mortis had begun, but his SEAL training overrode assumption. He knelt beside the frozen pup and performed tactical assessment. Body temperature through touch, chest compression resistance, eye response to light. And he felt a critical detail that changed everything. The body wasn't rigid with rigor mortis. It was rigid with ice. The stiffness came from frozen muscle tissue, not biochemical death. That meant recent exposure, and recent exposure in extreme cold meant there was a narrow window where the mammalian dive reflex might have preserved brain function. The mammalian dive reflex, a physiological response where extreme cold slows metabolism, reduces oxygen demand, and protects the brain from damage. It's why people survive extended cold water drowning, why hypothermic patients aren't declared dead until they're warm and dead. Alex made a split-second decision based on SEAL cold water survival training. What he did next was simple, but would save the puppy's life. He didn't use external heat sources like heating pads or hot water that could cause thermal shock and cardiac arrest. Instead, he used the most reliable heat source available, his own body. Alex stripped off his shirt despite the cabin's modest heating, tucked the frozen puppy inside against his bare chest, feeling the terrible cold of ice-rigid flesh against his skin. Wrapped both of them in a wool blanket that trapped body heat while allowing gradual warming. It was a technique called passive rewarming, taught in SEAL training for treating hypothermic teammates in the field when medical equipment wasn't available. The principle was simple. Human body heat transfers at approximately 98.6 degrees Fahrenheit, providing controlled warming that prevents shock while gradually raising core temperature. For 90 minutes, Alex sat perfectly still on his cabin floor. He regulated his own breathing to keep his core temperature stable while gradually transferring heat to the puppy. Every shift in position risked disrupting the warming process. Every distraction meant potentially missing signs of cardiac activity returning. Juno lay pressed against Alex's back, adding her body heat to the effort. The Belgian Malinois seemed to understand the mission. Her training recognized life or death scenarios, even outside combat zones. Alex monitored the puppy's condition by feel, checking for chest movement by counting subtle expansions against his skin, assessing warming rate by comparing skin temperature at different body locations, searching for signs of cardiac activity through the femoral pulse point where major arteries came close to the surface. Time moved with the peculiar distortion of high-stakes waiting, simultaneously eternal and fleeting. Alex's legs cramped from maintaining position. His back protested the immobility. His mind tried to wander to Iraq, to the ambush, to his teammates' final moments. But he forced focus back to the present, to the tiny body against his chest that might still be fighting. At the 70-minute mark, Alex felt something that made his breath catch, a tiny gasp against his chest, so faint he initially thought he'd imagined it. But then another, and another, shallow, irregular, but undeniably breathing. The puppy was alive. Alex continued the warming process for another hour, not rushing despite his body's protests. Hypothermia recovery required patience. Aggressive rewarming caused more deaths than hypothermia itself. He monitored the pup's breathing rate, felt her core temperature gradually rising, watched for signs of consciousness returning. At 2 hours, the puppy's eyes opened, just slits, but responsive to light. Alex began administering small amounts of warm water using an eyedropper, rehydrating tissue that had been frozen. By afternoon, the pup's core temperature had climbed from an estimated 75 degrees Fahrenheit to 98 degrees. The puppy was a small female, shepherd mix with distinctive husky coloring, gray and white markings, bright eyes that held more awareness with each passing hour. Alex named her Scout, thinking about how Juno had scouted the property and found something everyone else would have missed. But as Scout recovered, curled in blankets near the wood stove, with Juno standing protective guard, Alex's tactical mind engaged with questions that demanded answers. Where had Scout come from? There were no houses within 3 miles, no reports of lost puppies, and Scout showed signs of deliberate abandonment. No collar, no identification, evidence of malnutrition suggesting she'd been neglected before being dumped. Alex grabbed his tactical gear, the habits from deployment that never quite disappeared, and walked the area with Juno. The Belgian Malinois moved with professional focus, nose working, searching for the scent trail that would explain Scout's presence. They found tracks in the snow 200 yards from the cabin, boot prints leading from a service road, stopping at a specific point, then returning without deviation. Someone had driven here specifically to abandon Scout in lethal conditions. The boot pattern suggested adult, male, size 10 or 11, deliberate stride rather than the wandering gait of someone searching. Following the service road toward the main highway, Alex discovered something that ignited every combat instinct he possessed. A discarded cardboard box in a roadside ditch. Inside, 4 more frozen puppies. All dead. Same approximate age as Scout. Same mixed breeding. Same evidence of malnutrition. This wasn't one abandoned animal. This was systematic disposal. Alex contacted the Teton County Sheriff's Office from his satellite phone. Deputy Sarah Chen responded within 40 minutes, her expression darkening as she examined the scene. "How did you find these?" Chen asked, photographing the box and its contents. "My dog found one alive. I performed cold water survival protocols, passive rewarming using body heat. She survived. Then I tracked back and found these." Chen studied Alex with new interest. "You're the former SEAL living off County Road 39? "Yeah, Alex Durant." Chen's expression shifted to professional respect. "The puppy you saved, how bad was the hypothermia?" "Core temp around 75 degrees when I found her. Frozen solid. No breathing, no heartbeat. Took 90 minutes of passive rewarming before she gasped." That's battlefield medicine applied to a puppy. It's the same principle. Hypothermia is hypothermia. The mammalian dive reflex doesn't care if you're human or canine. Chen took detailed notes. Then she revealed information that transformed the investigation. "You're not the first to report this. Over the past 6 weeks, 11 puppies have been found dead or dying across 3 counties, all dumped in remote locations during extreme weather. Local shelters suspected illegal breeding operations disposing of surplus animals, but we had no leads on who or where." Alex's SEAL reconnaissance training engaged. "Do you have GPS coordinates for all the discovery sites?" Chen pulled up the data on her tablet. Alex studied the map with tactical analysis, pattern recognition skills honed by 12 years of identifying enemy movement patterns, supply routes, operational bases. The disposal sites weren't random. They clustered along a single highway corridor, Route 191, the main commercial trucking route through the region. Someone with regular travel along that corridor, legitimate reason to be in remote areas, a knowledge of locations where bodies wouldn't be discovered quickly. "This is a commercial operator," Alex said. "Someone running regular routes who can dispose of product without arousing suspicion. Commercial operator. Breeding operation, large scale. The puppies are too similar in age and condition to be random strays. Someone's producing them, and when they don't sell or have defects, They're disposing of overhead costs. Chen made calls. Within hours, she'd pulled business licenses for commercial breeding. Operations within the Tri-County area. One name appeared with permits covering all 3 disposal zones. Frontier Kennels, operated by Travis Holcomb. Alex researched Frontier Kennels using techniques from his military intelligence network. Contacts who owed favors. Databases accessible to former operators with maintained clearance. Social media pattern analysis. What he discovered made the pattern clear. Frontier Kennels advertised premium designer puppies online for $3,000 each. Holcomb's website showed pristine facilities, healthy dogs, glowing reviews. But cross-referencing production numbers with reported sales revealed a discrepancy. Frontier Kennels produced approximately 200 puppies annually, but only reported selling 140. The missing 60 puppies weren't unaccounted for. They were disposed of. Puppies with defects, wrong coloring, minor health issues, failure to sell within 8 weeks, represented overhead costs. Euthanasia through licensed veterinarians cost $200 to $300 per animal, but exposure during winter storms, free disposal with plausible deniability. Alex contacted Holcomb directly, posing as a potential buyer looking for a specific breed. The meeting at Frontier Kennels confirmed every suspicion. The facility was large, 15 acres, multiple buildings, professional appearance from the road. But inside, Alex's trained observation identified violations. Overcrowded breeding cages, barely meeting minimum size requirements. Malnourished mother dogs showing signs of excessive breeding cycles. Puppies with untreated ear infections and respiratory issues. When Alex asked about puppies that don't meet standards, Holcomb's response was chilling in its casualness. Nature takes care of the weak ones. In the wild, runts don't survive. I'm just facilitating natural selection. It's business efficiency. Can't afford to keep feeding dogs that won't generate revenue. Alex maintained cover, thanked Holcomb for his time, and left with photographs documenting the conditions. His tactical mind was already planning the operation. He contacted Deputy Chen, providing photo evidence of welfare violations, GPS data correlating disposal sites with Holcomb's delivery routes documented on social media, and detailed testimony about Scout's rescue. But Alex knew evidence alone might not be enough. Holcomb had money, legal representation, and time to destroy records. So Alex did something that shocked both law enforcement and the community. He launched a viral social media campaign featuring Scout's recovery. The video footage, captured on his phone during the rewarming process, showed Scout's frozen state with clinical documentation: body stiffness, ice-coated fur, absence of vital signs. Then the 90-minute passive rewarming sequence compressed to 5 minutes. Scout's first gasp, her gradual revival, her transformation from frozen death to playful puppy. Alex posted daily updates on Scout's recovery, intercut them with photos of the 5 dead puppies found in the cardboard box, tagged every animal welfare organization he could identify: ASPCA, Humane Society, PETA, local rescue groups, tagged news outlets, tagged celebrity advocates with millions of followers. The caption was simple: "This is Scout. Someone left her to freeze to death in 22-degree temperatures. She survived because a military working dog found her and I used Navy SEAL cold water survival techniques. 4 of her siblings didn't survive. This is systematic disposal disguised as nature. This is Frontier Kennels in Jackson Hole, Wyoming." Within 24 hours, The post had 500,000 views. Within 48 hours, 3 million news outlets picked up the story. Celebrity advocates shared it. Public outrage became pressure that politicians couldn't ignore. Wyoming Governor's Office contacted the state attorney general. State animal control mobilized for emergency inspection of frontier kennels with law enforcement support. Travis Holcomb learned about the viral campaign approximately 6 hours before authorities arrived. He attempted to hide evidence, removing the most malnourished dogs, destroying breeding records, sanitizing facilities. But systematic disposal over 6 weeks had left too much evidence. The inspection discovered 37 breeding dogs in distress, malnourished, showing signs of overbreeding, living in conditions that violated state welfare standards. 14 puppies suffering from untreated medical conditions, respiratory infections, ear mites, intestinal parasites, and forensic veterinarians determined that 11 of the 14 puppies showed signs of recent cold exposure. They'd been held for disposal during the next winter storm. Holcomb was arrested on scene. Multiple counts of animal cruelty, illegal disposal of animal remains, operating a commercial breeding facility in violation of welfare standards, and fraud for misrepresenting breeding conditions to buyers. As deputies loaded Holcomb into the patrol vehicle, Alex stood with Juno and Scout, the former SEAL, the combat dog, and the frozen puppy who'd survived impossible odds. Holcomb looked at Alex with pure hatred. "You destroyed my business over dogs that would have died in shelters anyway." Alex's response was SEAL cold. "I destroyed your business because you confused profit with purpose. Scout didn't need to die. None of them did. You just decided their lives were worth less than your convenience." The investigation into frontier kennels expanded as forensic accountants analyzed financial records seized during the raid. Travis Holcomb had generated $420,000 in profits over 3 years from his breeding operation. Less than 8% of that revenue had been allocated to veterinary care, a ratio that revealed his dogs as manufacturing inventory rather than living creatures. Holcomb faced 15 felony charges. His breeding license was permanently revoked. Frontier Kennels was shuttered, the property seized to fund rehabilitation costs for the 37 recovered breeding dogs and 14 surviving puppies. The case became a catalyst for legislative action. Wyoming State Representative Amanda Torres introduced Scouts Law, legislation requiring annual inspections of all commercial breeding facilities, criminal penalties for abandonment as a disposal method, and mandatory humane euthanasia performed by licensed veterinarians for any animals that couldn't be placed. Scout made a complete recovery with no neurological damage from the hypothermic episode. Veterinary experts from Colorado State University's Veterinary Teaching Hospital examined her case and published findings in the Journal of Veterinary Emergency and Critical Care. Their conclusion: Alex's passive rewarming technique, using body heat rather than external heat sources, had prevented thermal shock that often killed hypothermic animals during aggressive rewarming attempts. The controlled temperature transfer allowed Scout's metabolism to restart gradually, preventing the cardiac arrhythmias that caused death even after successful rewarming. Alex's simple 90-minute intervention became a teaching case in veterinary schools and emergency animal rescue courses across the country. The technique was standardized, documented, and added to wilderness first aid protocols. Alex officially adopted Scout, and she joined him and Juno on wilderness guiding trips. But Scout's story transformed his business in unexpected ways. Outdoor enthusiasts who'd heard about the rescue began requesting training in cold weather animal rescue techniques. Park rangers wanted to learn passive rewarming protocols. Search and rescue volunteers needed certification in hypothermia treatment for both humans and animals they might encounter. Alex developed a specialized course, Cold Weather Emergency Response for Outdoor Professionals. The curriculum combined SEAL survival medicine with veterinary emergency protocols. Students learned the mammalian dive reflex, passive rewarming techniques, cardiac assessment without medical equipment, and transport procedures for hypothermic victims. The 90 minutes that saved Scout's life became a standardized protocol taught to hundreds of people who might encounter similar situations. 6 months after Scout's rescue, Alex received a call from the American Kennel Club's Humane Fund. They requested he testify before a congressional subcommittee reviewing federal breeding regulations. Alex brought Scout and Juno to Washington, D.C. Scout, now healthy, energetic, 35 pounds of Shepherd Husky energy, sat beside him during testimony. Juno maintained her professional military bearing, the combat dog's discipline evident even in civilian settings. Alex's testimony was direct. This dog was frozen solid when my partner found her. Her heart had stopped. By every clinical measure, she was dead. But I used a technique the Navy taught me for saving teammates in cold water, passive rewarming using body heat. It cost me nothing but 90 minutes of sitting still and sharing warmth. He paused, making eye contact with committee members. That's what shocked people. Not that it was complicated, but that it was simple. One person's body heat for 90 minutes saved a life. And the fact that it needed to happen at all should shock us more. Scout was abandoned in lethal conditions because she represented overhead cost to someone who valued profit over life. She survived because a military working dog with combat training recognized a casualty and brought her to someone who refused to accept death until biology made the final call. The congressional testimony, combined with Scout's viral recovery story and Wyoming's legislative response, contributed to the passage of federal breeding standards. The Animal Welfare Act was amended to require humane euthanasia performed by licensed veterinarians for any commercial breeding animals that couldn't be placed. Travis Holcomb's method, abandonment during extreme weather, was explicitly criminalized with mandatory prison sentences. 1 year after the rescue, Alex sat on his cabin porch watching Scout and Juno play in the snow. Scout had grown into a 50-pound bundle of energy, showing no lasting effects from her near-death experience. Juno had found new purpose, mentoring Scout, teaching the younger dog through example, channeling her Belgian Malinois intensity into protection and training, rather than phantom alerts. A local family arrived to pick up one of the frontier kennel survivors they were adopting, a shepherd mix named Hope, who'd spent 3 months in rehabilitation recovering from malnutrition and overbreeding trauma. The father watched Scout leap through snowdrifts with obvious joy. "How did you know the frozen puppy could be saved?" he asked Alex. Alex considered the question, watching Juno supervise Scout's play with the patient authority of a senior operator. "I didn't know. But in the military, you're taught that the mission continues until you're certain it's over. That puppy's chest was cold, but it wasn't in rigor mortis. That meant maybe, just maybe, there was still a fight happening inside her body. So I gave her my heat and my time. Turned out, that was all she needed." The family left with hope, another survivor finding home. Alex remained on the porch with his two dogs, the combat-trained Belgian Malinois, who'd detected Scout's frozen body, and the puppy who'd survived because someone refused to quit. The simple action that saved Scout's life wasn't complicated medicine or expensive equipment. It was the willingness to share warmth when someone or something was frozen beyond hope, to sit still when action seemed futile, to refuse, to accept death until biology made the final call. Juno found Scout because a military working dog never stops detecting threats, even the threat of one small life slipping away. And Alex saved her because a SEAL never leaves anyone behind, not on battlefields where his teammates died, and not in snowdrifts where the difference between dead and frozen was measured in the warmth of a single human heartbeat. Scout bounded up the porch steps, tail wagging, snow covering her muzzle. She pressed against Alex's leg with the absolute trust of a creature who'd been given a second chance and knew exactly who to thank. Alex's hand found Scout's head, the same way he'd held her against his chest for 90 minutes. Good girl. Best girl. We made it. Juno lay beside them both, her Belgian Malinois intensity finally finding peace in a mission accomplished. She'd saved Scout by finding her. Alex had saved Scout by refusing to quit. And together, they'd built something from that frozen morning that extended far beyond one puppy's survival. 18 months ago, Alex had been a broken SEAL, carrying survivors' guilt and insomnia. Now he was a wilderness instructor who taught cold weather rescue, an advocate who'd changed federal law, and a handler to two dogs who both taught him that missions continued in unexpected ways. Sometimes salvation came frozen solid in a snowdrift, carried in the gentle jaws of a combat dog who knew exactly what her handler needed, a reason to fight for something again.